Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at how to make good selections. Today's assignment uses the file that you can find by going to bit.ly/selections-melon. That's all lowercase. bit.ly/selections-melon. On the screen here, you can see this is where we're headed. We're going to make a guy who looks sort of like this, and he's made up all these different bits and pieces. Now, when you open up the file that you download on bit.ly selections-melon, you get this. And these are the pieces parts over here that we are going to be using to create the face over here. And as we do that, we are going to be looking at a lot of different tools and strategies for making good selections in Photoshop. We will not be using layers in this session. Everything will happen in this background layer. Everything we do is going to be in one layer in the background. If you notice over here in your layers panel, you start to get extra layers like background copy or other weird things happening. You're going to want to do an undo because we just want to be in one layer. When we start getting a bunch of different layers, it gets a little more complicated. We're going to talk about that in future assignments. All right, let's start talking a little bit about the environment. Over here on the left, this area over here on the left is called your toolbar. And it's got a whole bunch of different tools. And if you click and hold on any of those tools, you'll see that there are many other tools embedded in that space. There's a whole bunch of tools. We won't get to, only a few of them today. This top area here, these top 3, 4, 5, 6 tools, and then you see there's like this little horizontal guide breaking them up. This top section that is broken off is called the selection tools area, and it encompasses the marquee tools, the lasso tools, quick selection and magic wand, crop, and a bunch of other stuff under the crop, and then some assorted utilities like the eyedropper tool. So we want to start with this tool here called the elliptical marquee tool. If the second tool down shows a rectangle shape, you click and hold on it, and you'll see the elliptical marquee tool right here. That's the one that you want. Now, marquee tool works with a simple click and drag. Click and drag on your page, and it'll give you an oval. If you click somewhere outside of that oval, it'll deselect, and you can draw another one. I want you to get in the habit of when you deselect, instead of clicking somewhere else on the page, get in the habit of using this shortcut, Control D. Hold down Control on your keyboard, type the letter D. Control D will deselect. Make a selection, Control D. Now, the way this selection tool works is anything that you have selected, Photoshop knows that's what you want to work with. If you make a selection and you go to your Move tool, the first tool in the toolbox, and you move, only the stuff you have selected is going to move. I'm going to undo that. Control-Alt-Z is your friend. Learn that shortcut. Control-Alt-Z will let you go backwards if you mess up. Control-Alt-Z. The other thing we need to talk about, besides how to make a good marquee tool selection, is how to zoom in and out. There's a few different ways to zoom in and out. I'm just going to show you one in this project, and that is this. Hold down the Alt key with your left hand. Hold down Alt right next to the space bar. And then with your mouse hand, I shouldn't have assumed that your Alt key was going to be your left hand. If you're left-handed, you're going to hold down Alt with your right hand. The scroll wheel on your mouse, you put the scroll wheel over the thing you want to zoom in on. So like if I want to zoom in on this thing, put the mouse right here and then scroll wheel up. It's going to zoom in, and scroll wheel down, it's going to zoom out. Okay, scroll wheel up to zoom in, scroll wheel down to zoom out. I want to show you one more shortcut. When you're zoomed in, you're going to want to zoom out to look at your whole picture. Then you're going to want to zoom in somewhere else. You're going to do some work. You're going to zoom out to see the whole picture. And you're going to keep doing that. You're going to zoom in, you're going to zoom out. A good shortcut for zooming out is Fit to Screen. And the shortcut for that is Control-0. Control-0 will always zoom you out to this view right here, kind of the big overview where you can see everything in your document. So that's a good one to know. Alt, scroll wheel up to zoom in. And then if you want to zoom out fast, Control 0 to zoom out. Okay, so here we go. The second tool down, elliptical marquee tool. I want you to zoom in on the blueberry. Okay, so put your mouse over the blueberry, hold down Alt, scroll wheel up. We'll zoom in on the blueberry. Now this is not a high resolution photo. As you zoom in, you will see that it's pretty rough looking. That's okay. For this assignment, we're not too worried about the resolution. It's about the selections. So the elliptical marquee tool. Now, if you try to select it by drawing a circle around it, click and drag, it'd be kind of a hassle because this is a circle, not a square. And so when you click and drag, it goes from a corner. The circles don't really have corners. So what's easier a lot of times is to go to the middle of the circle. So maybe, kind of right around here, put your little crosshair right in the middle of the thing you're selecting, and then hold down the Alt key. When you hold down Alt and you start to click and drag, instead of coming from the corner, it comes out of the middle. Click and drag up, click and drag out, comes right out of the middle. That could be a lot easier to find the center of a circle than to try to find the corner of a circle. Now, I'm still holding down Alt as I'm dragging. I want you to hold down something else now too. Okay, don't let up on the mouse. Keep holding on to that mouse button. While you're dragging from the center by holding Alt, hold Shift. When you do that, it makes it so that you can only draw a perfect circle as you drag out of the middle, which is great if you're trying to select something that happens to be a perfect circle, like this blueberry. The key to holding down these keyboard shortcuts is that you let up on the mouse before you let up on the keyboard. Let up on the mouse, then let up on the keyboard. A lot of people let up on the keyboard and the mouse at the same time. And let me show you what happens. I got this centered, holding down Alt space, and I let up. And what happens is the Alt Shift gets turned off, and then my mouse goes back to, my selection goes back to whatever you were trying to do before you were holding down Alt Shift. So it gets kind of messed up. So just Alt Shift, select from the center, and then let up on the mouse and let up on your keyboard. Now switch to your Move tool. The Move tool is the first tool in the toolbox. Go to the Move tool, it's that arrow tool at the very front of the toolbox. Click on that, and then click on your blueberry and drag. You see as you click on the blueberry, you get a little scissor shape that pops up. Click and hold and drag. And as you drag, just the part you had selected will move. And this is going to be the middle of our eyeball. So we're going to drag it down here on top of the carrot, which is our eyeball, just like that. I'm scrolling up and down with my scroll wheel as well. If you're not holding Alt and use your scroll wheel, it'll go up and down. If you hold down Control while you're scrolling, it'll scroll you left and right. Okay, practice that shortcut I showed you earlier. Control D. Control D will deselect. Okay, now we want to select the carrot, and you've got all the skills that you need necessary to select that carrot. We go back to our marquee tool. If you like shortcuts, if you don't like taking your mouse all the way over here to click on tools, if you mouse over any of these tools, it'll show you the shortcut. The letter M will jump to the marquee tool. So if I'm over here, I just moved it. I don't want to go all the way over to the toolbar. I just hit M on my keyboard. You can see there, it just jumps right to the marquee tool. And then V is the shortcut for the move tool. So if I want to jump back to the move tool, I hit V. M for marquee, E for eraser, B for brush, all these different shortcuts that you can learn or not, but sometimes it makes things a little bit quicker for you to just hit a letter on the keyboard instead of going and clicking on the tool. So our plus sign, we go to the middle of the blueberry, hold down Shift and Alt, click drag, right out from the middle. Okay, get your carrot selected. Now I want to show you what happens if you were in the wrong spot. What if I did Shift Alt and I dragged out and I go, oh boy, that is not right. It's all right. What you do there is try to get the right size. Like I figure that's about the right size. I'm just off to the right a little bit. I let up. And then I let up on my keyboard. I bring my mouse over. Here, it turns into this little white arrow. and I can drag my selection where it's supposed to go. I can drag my selection into place like that. Now I'm going to switch to my move tool, and I'm going to zoom way out, Control 0. And then I go to my caret, click and hold, and I drag it. Right over here, it's an eyeball. Just like that. Now, if you haven't saved recently, you should save. Today's assignment's called Melon. So you go to File, Save As, save it under your H drive, your student number drive. Call it Melon, your name. Put your first and last name on it. All right, moving on. You should probably still have your move tool selected, and your eyeball is still got the little marching ants still glowing with the selection. If you deselected it, if you did Control D, step backward. Do Control Alt Z to step backward, because we want this thing to be selected for our next step. And the next step is this. Put your mouse on your eyeball. Remember, you're on your move tool now. Hold down the Alt key, and your move tool turns into a double arrow. And when you're holding down Alt, drag to the right. Holding down Alt is drag a copy. Hold down Alt and drag anything you have selected is going to drag a copy of that thing. Now, if you had not selected your caret, if it was deselected and you held down Alt and dragged, you would possibly drag a copy of this whole background. That's not actually happening for me right now, but it does happen to people. Sometimes, let's turn off auto select. There we go. That's what happens. They drag a copy of the whole layer, and then they're like, what happened? Ah! If you do something like that by accident and you're like, oh no, just do Control Alt Z, step backward, and it'll take you back. You can Control Alt Z, you can go back about 12 steps. If you've screwed up further back than that, you might be out of luck. Hopefully you've saved recently enough that you can go to File, Revert, and go back to, the last time you saved. Anyway, we got one more thing to select with the elliptical marquee tool. Click on that, and that's our mouth, which is a kiwi. Now, the kiwi is not a perfect circle, so put your plus sign in the middle of the kiwi there. Hold down Alt and drag, but don't hold Shift. If you hold Shift, it's going to be a perfect circle, which this kiwi is not. If you just hold Alt, though, you can get a nice oval shape. You need to put your mouse in the middle of it and drag it a little bit, you can. And then Control 0 to zoom out. V is the shortcut to switch to your move tool. I just typed the letter V and then drag it over. And deselect, Control D. Well, we're out of oval shapes. We got to use some other tool to make a selection now. And the tool that I want you to look at is the fourth one down. It's called the Quick Selection tool. Go ahead and find the Quick Selection tool and select it. So the Quick Selection tool is kind of a miracle. I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have the Quick Selection tool. We only had the Magic Wand tool, which was a real bummer. The Quick Selection tool is much better. What the Quick Selection tool does is it tries to look at edges of images, and it tries to guess where the edge is for you. It does a pretty good job. The first thing you do is you go up here to your size menu for the Quick Selection tool, and you need to put the size as something that's smaller than what you're trying to select. So for this one, put the size down around 10, I think would be good. Okay, 10, 11, 9, 15, anywhere around there is good. Okay, you can either hit Enter on your keyboard to lock it in when you've made a change, or you can just kind of click over here, where there's nothing to make that close back up. So the way this works is this. There's these three buttons up at the top. The first button is to make a new selection. The next button is to add to a selection, and then this button is to subtract. You want to probably be set to the middle button, Add to Selection. If it's set to New Selection, that's okay too. Make sure you're not set to Subtract from Selection. And then we're going to make our selection. And we're going to start by selecting this little thing. I don't know what this is. I think maybe a tomato. I don't really know. But what we do know is it's going to be a nose. So you put your mouse on the inside, okay? Don't kind of come halfway on, halfway off, or go outside. Go right in the middle and just do a single click. Because of the difference between the color of this fruit and the background, it selects in one click. That's all you need to do. One click should get it. If it doesn't quite get it, and you need to kind of move your mouse a little bit and do a little bit of a click, click, click to get it selected, you can. If it goes too far and does something like that, I'm going to show you how to fix that, but not for this assignment. This one's too easy. So just undo. If it goes too far, just do Control-Alt-Z. Switch to your Move tool. Zoom out, Control-0. And click right on there and drag it over as our nose, just like that. Now, very important, deselect, Control-D. Deselect. I should have been clear about deselecting the mouth, but I can't go backwards now, sorry. If you selected your nose and you went to move it and your mouth moved at the same time, I'm sorry. That was my fault because I didn't say to deselect your mouth before you went and selected your nose. If that happened, undo, Control-Alt-Z, get everything back into place, switch to your quick selection tool, deselect, Control-D, click on your nose, go back to your Move tool, drag it into place. And then deselect, Control-D. Now zoom in on our bow tie, holding down Alt, scroll wheel up, zooming in. So back to the quick selection tool, shortcut W. Now, if you go on your bow tie and click and drag on the inside, don't go outside of it, stay right on the inside. It's not as good. It's not as good. It's selected too much because this shadow color is very similar to the color of this bow tie, and it got confused. It didn't know what we're doing, but that's okay. We can teach it. Here's what you do. Put your mouse out here, off the bow tie. Hold down the Alt key. Hold down Alt. Now your brush gets a little minus sign. When the minus sign shows up, anywhere you click or drag is going to take away from the selection. So I'm going to go right here on this bit I don't want and click. I'm going to go here, click, go here, click, 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 just like that. Okay. And then over here, I don't want that either. I'm going to click and drag on this area. You see what it did? It said, oh, okay. And then it went too far this way. Don't worry. We'll come back to that. Come here, click and drag, kind of get that back in there like that. Usually when you're doing this, you have to Alt, push it back a little bit, and then it goes too far. So then you let up on Alt, you come back on the bow tie, and then click a couple times, kind of push it back out. Usually a couple times is all you need for Photoshop to get a pretty decent selection. Now these little ridges here, they don't have them exactly where they need to be. If you want to get picky, you can. You can get a smaller brush, like a 5 or so, and then you can, have more control of where you're trying to go with it. But for this assignment, we're not being too picky. We just want to get the basics. So if you don't have a perfectly selected bow tie, don't sweat it. No big deal. Control-0 to zoom out. Switch to your Move tool, V, or click over here on your Move tool. And then go inside the bow tie and drag it down. Now don't deselect it yet. Okay, we got it dragged over. We're going to leave it selected because I want to do a new thing. I want to stretch it out. If you want to transform something, there's a transform menu under Edit, but I want to get in the habit of using the shortcut for free transform, Control-T. Okay, so you move it into place, and then on your keyboard, you just hit Control, hold down Control, and type the letter T. Control-T. When you do, you get this thing. It's called the transform box. And there's these 8 handles. You can grab a handle, grab a corner handle, and then just pull it out. Pull it down and to the left or up and to the right, wherever it is you grabbed it from, and get a skinny bow tie, and then move it back up into place. Now, when you go to move something with a transform box, you want to make sure you don't grab right here. This little thing is called an access point, and you don't want to grab that. Grab anywhere else on the image and drag it into place. Once you get it stretched the way you want and kind of placed the place you want, hit this check mark up at the top to lock in your transform. Check. And then deselect, Control D. Okay, if you haven't saved lately, now's a good time to go to File and Save, or use the shortcut for save, Control S. All right, you've already got a lot of skills. You've learned how to use marquee tools. You've learned how to use the quick selection tool. You've learned how to transform. We're really cooking. Let's zoom in here on these radishes. These will be real easy to select. You're probably still at size 10 or so. So I'll go back up to 10. You click on the greens, one click. Then click on the red part of the radish right there, the bulb, and it'll select. And that's it. 2 clicks, you should be able to get the radishes. Zoom out, Control 0. Switch to your move tool and move the eyebrow into place, just like that. Now we need 2 eyebrows. You know how to drag a copy. We already did that earlier. Hold down the Alt key and drag, and it'll drag a copy. Now you see that little white bit going around the outside of the radishes there. That's kind of annoying, right? That's not as cute as it could be. Don't worry about it. In future assignments, when we start talking about masking and things like that, you'll learn a lot better how to make a really nice selection. So don't worry about if you've got fuzzy. See, my nose has got a little bit of fuzz on it too. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that later. So we dragged a copy by doing Alt drag with the move tool, but obviously this eyebrow is going the wrong way. So we're going to flip it. Do that shortcut we just learned for free transform. Do Control T. Just like that. And then to flip it, you take your mouse and you go right on the transform and you right click. Right click on the transform box and you get a whole bunch of transform options. And the one that we want is down here towards the bottom, flip horizontal. Just like that. Come over to your transform box, drag it into place, just like that. Lock it in. Check mark up at the top. Deselect, Control D. Look at that. Almost done. We need some ears. The ears, we only want the middle bit. Okay, so go back to your quick selection tool or type the letter W. One click should get it. One click right here. Easy peasy. Switch to the move tool. Drag it over. Now this, we got to rotate it. It's going horizontal. We need it to be vertical. So to hit Control T again. Control T, get your transform box. And this time, instead of grabbing a handle or instead of right clicking, go outside the transform box. So don't grab a handle, go further, go out where there's no handles. And your mouse turns into a little curvy arrow. And when you get that curvy arrow, you click and drag. And rotate. Look at that. Get it where it looks like it's an ear. If you want to make it a little smaller, you could go to a corner and you could kind of make it a little smaller, whatever. Looks just great. Look at that. Lock it in with the check mark. And then don't deselect because we need a second ear. Hold down the Alt key, drag a copy. Now you know how to do this step. We just did it with the eyebrows. Control T, right click, flip horizontal. And you can move that into place. You can rotate it a little bit if you want. And then lock that in, check mark, and deselect, Control D. The last step, back to the quick selection tool. Click and drag on our mushroom cap. Looks nice. Switch to the move tool. Drag it up into place just like that. All right. If you've got a man that looks like a, nope. If you got a melon that looks like a man, you're in good shape. Better deselect this or our next step's not going to work. Control D. The very last step is to do a crop. The crop tool is over here. It's the 5th tool down. Crop tool, shortcut C. When you get your crop tool, you get these handles that pop up at the edges of your picture. You can grab one of those handles if you want. Drag it in. Drag it up. Go another handle. Drag it down. When you're in the crop tool, you also can just draw a box. Like you can click and drag a box, and wherever you click and drag, it's going to set a crop. So everything goes gray that's outside the crop. Everything inside the crop still shows in color. And that's the stuff that you want to keep that's inside the crop. So readjust it however you need to so that the good stuff is all within the crop. And then up at the top, there's your check mark, just like you lock in a transform box. Click that check mark to lock in your crop. That's it. Save it one more time and then hand it in. To hand it in, you go to File, Save As, and you save it in your shortcut for your class period that's on your desktop. Make sure your name is on it. When you saved it originally, you called it Melon, first name, last name. And that's it. That's selections. We'll talk a lot more about making better selections and putting things in layers so you have a lot more control over them and controlling how things fit together and work together. But that's a nice start. If you made some good selections today, you are on your way to becoming a Photoshop pro. See you next time.